Hey there, it's Amanda. I'm going to do something, a little bonus reading here. This is for anyone who is going through this is on their spiritual journey right now. And it's going to be kind of like a theme around integrating the heart and the mind a little bit. So, because that's a big thing for almost every stage of the journey for anyone, doesn't even really matter what it is that your individual journey is about. I feel like every level that you go, you have to work on integrating those and learn how to create consciously in that aspect by that alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull 3 cards from the spiritual traveler, and this is going to be like more of the heart-centered side of what's going on with you, if this resonates and this, if you were drawn to this reading. And then I'm going to do the Modern Spellcasters Tarot, and that's going to be like where your head's at right now, right? Your mind. 3 each. And then I'm going to, at the end, pull a card from the Sacred Geometry Activation Oracle to see how we can activate that integration and kind of hone in those 2 aspects and get that together and integrated. So let's do the head first. Let's do the mind. It's going to be, the first one will be, what you have already learned. So, mostly like what you've already, probably like the last lesson you had just, been on, what you learned. And then the second one will be, what lesson you're on right now, that you're working on right now, that you haven't, completed yet, but how your mind is in relation to that, like what's your mindset about it. And then the third one will be like what your intentions are and how you kind of think you're going to go about it, right? So like your plans and your plan of attack, or like your strategy, and just what's going on in your head about it. Anyone on a spiritual journey right now, 2019, whoever needs to hear the guidance the most, please. What have they already in their mind learned in the recent past? Their most recent lesson before this. What have they recently learned? Okay, well, there's 3 cards. Number 1, you have learned how to take off the blinders in a heated situation where where you had been stubborn and it was hard not to be because something really upset you. And it put you in a pride state where you didn't want to hear any options. You weren't going to hear it. You weren't even going to look at it because you couldn't even fathom the thought of it. Like, you were being so stubborn that you didn't even know that if you just looked up for 1 second, you would see that you have a way right out. So maybe that's something that you had just learned, something of that nature. You learned that, even when the fire's hot, you should always at least consider all the information instead of, only looking at one side of the pros or cons. All right, and right now you're dealing with justice. So this is like truth coming out. Like, you're starting to see things. Like, this is the lesson you're on right now. Maybe this is a fresh awakening for some of you. Like, maybe this is a really big epiphany along the way of a journey, or this is like the initiation. Like, you just learned, like, oh boy, I have only been looking at things one-sidedly, and there's like a whole other side of this, and I gotta at least consider it and make a decision that resonates with me, right? So you're like, okay, I need to take off the blindfold and look at all things, and then, make a conclusion from all the information instead of just some of it because you're so heated or dead set on something. You've learned that already, and that is what has caused this like truth, this like raw truth, this unveiling, this lifting of the veil, this like leveling of the scales, this things coming in and getting set straight. That's what you're going through right now, and that's Major Arcana, so that's kind of a big deal. I feel like this is, if you were drawn to this reading and you just learned how to look at everything and not be biased in a way because of a temper or pride. If that resonates with you, I think that you had just really woken up, and this is like either a seed that finally fermented, that like you're like one day like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, it's like an awakening epiphany, right? Or it's like one of the very first stages of that happening here. And what your plan of attack here, King of Swords, so you're in the right mind state. You got this justice. You just learned the swords. Maybe this is a cycle that repeated, and you know this. And last time you knew that blindfold is what held you back. And there was a way out if you would have just looked up. And this time you know that you need to temper that and just take a look, even if you don't do it still. Just look at all the information. Don't be too stubborn about it, even if you're worked up. And you know that because this time around, you're doing it right. You're doing it fair. This is exactly, you actually kind of like know what to do now because you've, failed at your attempt before. But the thing is that you learned the lesson from it. Even if it wasn't a success that time around, at least you got the lesson from it. And this time you were able to do it because you were able to see that now. Because this was in reverse, this Eight of Swords. So I keep putting it down upright, but it's coming out of a state where you were being too, having too much pride to look at part of the info, or just being stubborn, right? To see everything. And if you would have, there's an easy exit there out of that trap. So you know that now, and you're coming in ready to go because it's like you're ready to level the scales, be fair, and you know kind of exactly what you're doing, and you're in moral standing. So it's like King of Swords, he's very intellectual, he's good at communicating, he is strategic, and this is the plan of attack card too, like your strategy. King of Swords is the best for that, like especially right after Justice. Like you know exactly what to do, you know it's right, like it resonated with you when you had that epiphany and you learned the lesson out of whatever failed attempt of this in the past you might have had, that you kind of feel the familiar like cycle again, even though it might be a different situation. It's kind of the same feeling, like now you're gonna do it right this time. Let's see where your heart's at here. That's pretty cool, like that. Bottom of the deck for that 3-card spread is the Page of Swords. So it's like, now you're ready to come in swinging. I don't usually see the card like this, but it's like things that aren't working for you, that it was just kind of something you had to go through because you had to learn. And now because of that, this time around, you're able to do it right and get it over and succeed this time around. It's like you're coming in swinging this time because like you look at the smile. It's like they know now. It's like, all right, let's do this. Let's go. I'm ready. Swing batter, And the sword again. It's like knowing now, the messenger, like ready to come up to the batter, like ready to come up to bat, the batter. Anyway, okay, so let's do the heart center. Anyone on a spiritual journey right now? Where's their heart at in all of this? What does their heart feel about this? With the lesson learned recently, Eight of Swords in reverse. Oh, how does your heart feel about what you learned? Oops. Okay, so we got great adventure. Take a risk, venture forward. So you're like, all right, blindfold's coming off. That's how you feel about it. Now that you know, you're ready to go ahead and do this again. So you're gonna come in with the scales. All right, and then right now, the lesson you're learning with the Justice, stepping into power. You are strong beyond measure. Because this time you learned what you needed to with the lesson and you're ready to play it out this time around. That's awesome. You are strong beyond measure. So you're feeling emotionally strong. That's good. Venture. You're ready to do this time. Like you aren't fearing it at all. Before it was something that was probably really hard. Maybe you cycled through that a few times. Eight of Swords. It's kind of like a mental anguish energy, like really feeling trapped, but because of some sort of pride and it's like selective evaluation, like not like refusing to look at something as part of it. Like you knew kind of that was the answer, but you weren't going to consider it because it's not, you weren't ready to admit it. Like you're still kind of fighting it, but it's like, it's kind of upsetting. So it's like now that you finally got it, I could see where you'd be ready to venture forward, a great adventure, and do it now because like you're finally awake to the fact of what had made you unsuccessful in that cycle before, something that you didn't see for so long. That veil lifts and you're stepping into power. So what is the heart center feeling around this strategy this time through? Ooh. What is the heart center vibrating for the plan of attack strategy along the way of this current lesson? Like unstoppable. All right, rejuvenating rain. Clear the past, heal the present. So it's like, yeah, now that you know what that lesson was and it took that long to take the blinder off, like heal it. Once you got it and you come in with these scales and you come in swinging, ready to, do this one and do it right, because now you know that you have the answer and like you just need to act on it this time. Like once you do that, you got to make sure that like you go through the clearing of it too, because there was a lot of mental anguish around however many times. Maybe it was just one, but I feel like it was something that took you more than a few because it was something a little harder with a lot more like burning passion behind it. Maybe it was a lot of like emotional uproar or just like really mentally anguishing to you, like whatever it was, there was a lot around it. So I don't think it was a one-time through thing. I think it's the reason why you're so excited to go through it again right now is because you know that like what you had not before that kept you cycling through this, and you're like, it's go time now, I'm ready to go. But just remember that like after that and the storm clears and you did it and you got through it and you're on to the next, that's going to be a brand new lesson and a brand new lesson, like whole phase. And who knows, like you probably won't get it the first time around, maybe you will, but it's a whole new thing. And you've been doing this one for so long or however long, and like it's going to be a whole new ball game, right? So it's like take the time before that all comes into play to do the clearing and the healing and like releasing all the stuff that maybe had been hanging around after however many times that you didn't see in the past with this, like whatever lesson this is, and make sure you clear that out and release it after you get to actually act on that insight you had received and go on this great adventure. So I hope that helps you. That's pretty cool. I liked that. Let's do the geometry activation card. I'm going to pull one from here, this oracle deck, to show us how to pull it all, mind and heart, into unison here, in balance and in harmony. Oh, okay. Perfect. Crown chakra. You need to ask for guidance. They can't, your spirit guides and, whatever your higher power is that you believe in, angels, whatever it is, like they can't help you no matter how much they want to unless you ask. It's a universal law. Like they aren't able to do that unless you ask for it. So before even reading this, I would say ask for help, reach out, be open to help too. Like, and I'm sure you kind of know what to do here because it seems like you real quick figured that out after not seeing it for so long. You're like, oh my gosh, how did I not see that? Once you see it, you're like, wow, like there was a way out, like in plain sight, but you wouldn't even look, you know? Like once you see it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like I knew that, but I didn't know that. And if I just would have looked or listened, I would have seen it, you know? So number 7, crown chakra. This is how you're gonna integrate heart and mind. The frequency of the crown chakra, the violet flower of life, supports our spiritual connection to the universe and our ability to transmute negative energy into light. So even though this looks like it was probably really hard, it is over and you've gotten the lesson out of it. You haven't been able to physically play it out yet, but hey, all that work came from learning the lesson, right? So at least you know the answer. So it's just got to go through the motions now. And you got to make sure that after that, you can transmute all that negative energy that came along, all that, all the struggle and like effort and emotion, like emotional upheaval that came along with like the anxiety and the frustrations, all of that came along with that lesson that you had to learn. Like make sure that you can transmute that negativity and heal, like the third card said, rejuvenating rain. Like make sure you can transmute that and not hang on to the negative stuff that came along with it, because at the end of the day it's over and you learned what you needed to learn. So get rid of the rest because it doesn't serve you anymore. It did at one time. It served you when you didn't have the blindfold off yet, because you never would have finally broken down and ripped it off at one point had it been easy. You would have stood your ground. You wouldn't have ripped you wouldn't have overcome that pride or stubborn attitude if you didn't have a good reason to. Like you wouldn't have, unless it got too uncomfortable to do something about it, right? So yeah, that negativity served you then to get you to see. But if you already see now, don't hang on to that negativity without realizing it. Make sure to transmute that and clear. And, you know, take the time to heal and get your energy back and like balance, because a whole new lesson comes off of this, and that comes with a whole bunch of other stuff around it, I'm sure. So it's going to be awesome, and it's definitely like next level, but you know, make sure to go into it like the fool, right? Go into it with no bias, no resentments, no baggage, no worries, right? That's part of every cycle. Once you learn a lesson, it's always important to do this, and it's always when somebody doesn't want to do this part and they just kind of go about with, whether it's them just not consciously realizing what they're doing, like, and they might have learned something and started new anyway, like you aren't aware of that. And when that happens, when those cycles are completing and starting, like you won't clear and you won't recharge, because you won't be aware that another one's coming that you haven't even played ball in before, right? So it's like knowing that's coming, just recharge, clear, release, get ready to go, because got all new stuff coming in, and you wanna get through it in the best way, right? So yeah. Flower of life, the purple. Crown chakra, ask for guidance and be willing to receive it. If you can visualize that flower of life in that color purple, that could probably be helpful too. All right, well, I hope that helped you and that this was insight for somebody on their spiritual journey. Have an awesome rest of your month, and I'll see you soon. Bye.